First thing first, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for being here, attending the summit. It's really exciting for us to be here. So we will be talking about our daily life, like in the job, detection engineers. You probably hear it. You might not be hear it. That's fine because we'll be talking more about it from the ground up. So you will learn like from the zero of this particular career. So yeah, so I'm Manga Tostondang and Sylvan Lu on the other screen. It's my partner in crime today. Next slides, please. Yeah, so I'm Tas, also Manga Tas. I'll go by Task Manager everywhere else, like Twitter and some other places. So I'm a security researcher at Microsoft. I'm focusing on the cloud security, but I have extended experience in developing detections in anywhere else, like endpoint, servers, you name it, network. And yeah, outside of work, I do enjoy a lot of traveling. I spend some time doing astrophotography and just cooking in general. I enjoy to cook different new foods. And Sylvain, take the mic.
Yeah, thanks for intro, Mangatas. Yeah, my name's Sylvain. I'm a senior security developer at Arctic Wolf. I don't think you need an introduction from Microsoft, but for Arctic Wolf, we're a MDR company, managed detection and response. So, yeah, on my free time, like playing games. Like currently, right now, I'm really into like Helldivers. A lot of people have been playing it. Like watching anime, and I love trying out new foods, especially the foods that my friend Tassier makes. It's really good. So
Yeah, thank you, Sylvan, for the nice introduction. So yeah, so first thing first, we'll go some disclaimer. So we are doing this based on our views, based on our very own experience. And also note, this is a shortened version of our kind of like introduction to detection engineering presentation. So you might have a lot of question, a lot of missing details. So I think I'm glad that there is a channel on the Slack that you can ask questions. So please drop all the questions there. We'll be going through them for sure. And if we mention any product, if we mention any company, it's not an endorsement or anything, but we believe that they offer a good product that can be useful for the journey. So yeah, next slide, please. So yeah, today contents will go like some simple stuff about detection engineering. We'll go with from the intro. We'll talk about the responsibility of me and Sylvan and other detection engineers, the essential skill for success. I think this is why you are here right now. You want to learn how to get to our spot and even beyond what we are doing. So we get some guide for that. And then of course, there's some conclusion, Q&A. We get some appendix full of resources for you to read, people to follow, etc. So yeah.
all right, let's get into it. So first, like, let's ask ourselves, like, what is even detection engineering, right? We can firstly ask like maybe ChatGPT. That's a pretty good starting point, right? It'll give you a lot of fluff, but we can just focus on like maybe the first 2 points or first 2 lines, right? So it focuses on developing and implementing systems and processes to detect and respond to security threats effectively. So you might be like, okay, what does that even mean still, right? But so in 3 short bullet points, our definition is, yes, it is focused on creating detections. That's in the name in itself. But also it's about managing, improving the detection and the platform. If you don't have a platform to support it, then you don't have the detections to work with. And lastly, an overlooked point is really, it's about building relations with other stakeholders. We're going to hone in on this point a lot, where you're kind of like an intermediary between various like arms in your organization when it comes to security. So this could be a dedicated role or a combined role. So so me and Mangatas, we have a background in like threat hunting, so that's where we met, where we built up the majority of like our experience. But a lot of our colleagues didn't have that like that experience, and they started off as maybe like a security analyst. This role can be named differently depending on the organization. For example, like my role is I'm a security developer. Like there's no detection or engineering in it. So in the industry, they might use different names to designate this function. So where does this function or role like fit in your organization? You can kind of think of it like as a maybe like as a movement where you could have an individual person doing it. But oftentimes you might see that it's multiple individuals or organizations that contribute to this role. So if you want to think of like the top half as kind of like the threat focus type of roles, so like those in research, so like threat hunting that do threat intel, they're very threat focused on like doing research on that. Then there's the operations side, which is when we're talking about operations here, we mean more like the SOC analysts. So the people that receive the alerts that depend on your detections to know what's going on and what to respond to. And then at the bottom here, these are the folks that support this, right? Your engineering team. They support like your tools and your platform and the logging team. So without data, right, you need folks like sysadmins to deploy your agent or just supporting like your tooling. So all of these contribute to kind of like the greater function that is detection engineering. It's not just about like building the rules. So yeah, why is it important? Like as a role in itself, you act as like a mediator or a translator between threats, data, and the detection. We'll focus this on this more later. You need to be you're looked as you need to be kind of like the subject matter expert for kind of like this process. You're bringing in security context to the analyst, and ultimately you kind of act as like their guardian angel or like their protector for in terms of like flooding of alerts, right? So alert fatigue is something that you might have heard about, and it's our role to prevent that as much as we can, right? And just to hone in on that again, like we act as a mediator between like the data, the threats, and the detections. So to highlight some of like tangible kind of like responsibilities, we mapped it in like this high level like life cycle. You might have seen like this, like, I guess like pattern in like threat hunting, like the threat hunting life cycle. We kind of like adjusted it for detection engineering here. But in the preparation stage, you don't have to do every single bullet point every time that you start this cycle, right? Like, but if you start off, like you need to select a framework or a platform or like what types of detections that you need to focus on, right? The other things that you will be doing more periodically though is doing data and log selection or like analysis. So curating your data, making sure that you're getting what you need to build your detections with. From there, you need to select what detections you want to even prioritize, right? And we'll hone in on this a little bit more, but here it's where you do some research, hypothesis creation. You can make detections based on like TTPs or just whatever like your leadership or management wants to be aware of, right? As like a security threat. And then this is where in the implementation phase, this is the actual engineering in itself. So understanding what is the best way to detect it, like what technologies are required to implementing it, what data is required, and then what does that output look like? And once it's in production, right, it's not done and over. You need, we have like a saying where it's like the detections are alive, right? Like you need to have some metrics, some checks and balances to make sure that the rule is working as intended, that it's not creating too many false positives. If there are spikes, why are there spikes? And you need to have supporting documentation. It sounds like for me, when I first started, it was very like unexciting work. But the more I work with like my detections, the more I'm grateful that we like in the organizations that I've worked at, like they really reinforce the documentation. Like you need to know why is this why was this detection created? What was it meant to detect, right? And how can we identify like false positives easily? And once you're done with that, like the cycle repeats itself, and you continuously improve your detections and your coverage. Okay, so essential skills for success. So this is a real life job posting that you can find, and it can be kind of confusing on like what should you focus on to stand out as a candidate, right? And we're here to I guess like enlighten you on that, so or make it more simple. If there's anything that you need to take away from our talk, it's these 3 points here. Like detection engineering is about the threats, the data, and the detection. And we'll dive into each one shortly. But essentially, the threats is just understanding what attacks are out there. So just having a like a red team, like an understanding of like what type of like what is red team behavior, what is malicious behavior. So you see here in the first line in the basic qualifications, they want X years of experience in threat detection, threat hunting, or intrusion. All right. Then in the next line, it's about understanding the data, right? So being a subject matter expert in any of the following surfaces. So like say in-depth knowledge of security logs signals from Linux, Mac OS, Windows EDR, NSM, or public cloud, right? So that's basically every surface, but uh, we'll dive in deeper on what that means in the following slides. And then experience building detection logic. So detection is the actual implementation in itself. Okay. So yeah, going into a deeper dive into each one. So threats, aka TTPs, and risks. So this is understanding what threats are relevant to your organization, right? You don't want to focus or think about even building detections for like Linux vulnerabilities if that is not a relevant threat to your organization, right? Conversely, there's also prioritizing which ones are more severe. So you want to focus on things that maybe impact like the crown jewels versus like things that have a lower impact, right? Yeah, there's some great resources to learn about threats. If your organization unfortunately may have experienced an incident or a breach before, that's definitely prime ground to like learning opportunity. But you don't have to suffer a breach to learn, right? You can learn from other people's I don't want to say mistakes, but breaches, right? So other experiences out there. And then there's blogs or meetups or presentations that you can learn from, right? But if all of that is still confusing and if you're not part of an organization just yet, like that can support this, you can just learn through like the MITRE ATT&CK framework. This is like the staple in the industry. Everyone essentially, at least definitely knows of MITRE if they don't use MITRE already. Sorry, MITRE ATT&CK specifically. So yeah, so just to wrap this all up, it's threats is just about knowing what to detect. Moving on to data, aka logs and telemetry. So we've divided it into 3 different types or surfaces. So there are network logs. So there are some prime examples are like your network appliances that are like firewalls or NIDs. And then you'll have your host logs, so like EDR, Windows, like Sysmon. And then another category would be cloud. So any cloud services that you use, like O365 or anything like that. So we say that like, to be a good detection engineer, you definitely need to have strong familiarity with one, but ideally you be you're data agnostic. You shouldn't really care where the data is coming from to build your detections. So to wrap this up, data is just about knowing where to detect the threat. And moving on to detection or the engineering aspect. So this is like the implementation. How will you detect this threat, right? You have the where, you have the what, and now it's asking the how. And this can be simple or complex, right? You can do based off of IOCs, like very basic signatures. It could be TTP based, like behaviors or correlation. You can use like dashboards, thresholds, and like not to throw in like the buzzword here, but like you can definitely use machine learning. There are some niche use cases that are very useful for it. But you don't have to start from scratch, right? There are like really big repos that you can kind of like look into for like as a starting ground for inspiration or recycle, I guess. We'll talk about these more later, but your detection will depend on your tech stack. So what technologies that you have available to you, and what platform that you essentially have, right? And does your platform support like programming or scripting, right? On top of that. So let's see. Yeah. So just to do some honorable mentions here, right? So it's just you need to have a good understanding of like security, network, and like some operating systems. It's really great if you had some experience with some querying language, like for KQL or like SPL for like Splunk. Programming. So this is kind of controversial. In my day-to-day, honestly speaking, I don't do a lot of programming, but it's definitely a boon to know. Like I do know how to code, but day-to-day wise, it's not a hard requirement. But obviously, if you know it, it's very useful. And then let's see. Okay, just moving up on time real quick. So some soft skills is like, you're here to solve problems, to analyze logs and understanding what is the problem that you're trying to address. And again, you're a mediator between those various branches of your organization. So, writing and, some presentation or documentation skills is highly desired. So yeah, moving on to this quote here. I think, Tas, this is your quote, right?
Yeah, I keep telling people this is somebody else quote because I'm not, So yeah, so this code is really applicable for I think just cybersecurity in general, but especially for detection engineers. So master one or two, understand some, and then know the rest. We've seen a lot of skill set we mentioned. There is no needs, not even us, not even other people in the field. They know everything. No, they don't. They know some of them. The good ones master a lot of them, but they don't know everything. So it's okay for you to not know certain things. Sylvan, next slide, please. Yeah, so when you say detection engineering, so the regular path that we see, it's probably coming from the operation side. So if you remember on the right side, there's like a operation side. So it's coming from the SOC analyst or MDR, one of those things. And then you go to threat hunting and traditional detection engineering. So that's what people tell you all the times. But from what our experience on the different organization, from small, big, different verticals, we are seeing a lot of pathways to go to detection engineering. So people here might not be coming from blue team. They might be coming from red team, and you might be coming from sysadmin. You could be project manager. All of them can actually go to detection engineering just by modifying the skills a little bit, like kind of like pointing their direction to the detection engineering North Star. So that's how you look into this graph. So you can be programmer, you can be data engineer, you can still go to detection engineering. I think that this is the critical thing that we want to say here. And to know which skills to learn, you have to kind of adjust it to whatever pathways that you're using. So we give all the skills as possible, and then kind of like pick one and choose. So you don't try to learn everything. Yeah, next slide, please. And yeah, so how do I get there? That's the biggest question. So next slides. So we like to put some memes on the presentation to keep it fun. So almost every single InfoSec newcomers, might be students, it could be people transitioning. They're like, oh, what certification do I need to get to go to this path? So the thing about certification, it's a great resources to learn. SANS, for once, they have a lot of trainings, a lot of certification that is teaching practical skills. But sometimes you are just starting up, so you might not have the money, you might not have the knowledge to obtain those certs. So you don't have to worry about it from the start. So take your time, and then we'll show you some resources later that can help you. So next slide, please. So yeah, so if you are familiar to SANS, you probably hear the name of David Bianco, and of course, David Bianco is always connected to Pyramid of Pain. So we like to create a spin-off kind of thing. Learner's Pyramid of Pain could be for detection engineer, but in cybersecurity in general is applicable. So next slide, please. So it's a literally pyramid of pain, because the pain here is you have to learn, you have to start from the bottom all the way to the top. So we have 5 different sections in this pyramid. So school, or whatever current role that you're doing, understanding the role more, exploring resources, home lab, and share. Next slide, please. So school or role that you're doing right now it's changing the mentality of why you are doing something. There was a question in the chat about like how do you connect academic to the technical stuff. So I think this is how you do it. You go to school not for the grades, not for the good marks, not for the diplomas. You work not for pays, but you are actually doing that for understanding the different supporting concepts that can help detection engineering or other security roles. It starts from computer networking. If you're in the software engineering, you have to understand what is the software development lifecycle. We use it in detection engineering. We use it everywhere else in security. Things like mathematics, statistics, those are not really one-on-one type, but those are still things that will help you when you're doing learning in the future stage of the pyramid. Of course, there's recent threats, cybersecurity, intrusion analysis that's more like home to detection engineering. So just try to get more basics understanding. If you understand how computer works, it's really easy to understand, okay, what happened with these threats when they're exploiting certain computer parts, etc. Next slide, please. And then if you know the basis, and then you need to know where you want to go. What's my destination? If you're going to vacation, you're gonna go to Paris, right? You wanna see, okay, what sightseeing I'm gonna see? What currency do I need to bring? Do I need, take the flight, train, etc.? So knowing it deeper, it will help you for sure. So you will need to know skills needed, or you already know the skills needed. Sylvain just explained to you. You need to know the daily task responsibility. Well, he also did it. That's crazy. And then there are like things like standards, frameworks, challenges. I think there was a resource posted, MITRE ATT&CK, on the chat. That is one of the biggest framework that you will be using in the field. And you need to connect with the right people too. So Zach Allen is one of the good people in detection engineering. He's releasing weekly detection engineering newsletter. So you get everything related to detection engineering, good resources. I have verified. Now I've been reading it all the time. And then Brandon Chamberlain's, if you don't know about Awesome repository. So Awesome repository is a GitHub repository related to certain things. So Awesome detection engineering, it's all the resources related to detection engineering in GitHub. So there will be a lot of links to different papers, books, videos, concepts, etc. So if you're following these 2 resources, you already have a lot in your plate. And of course, connecting with the right people, it's going to be important. So Zach Allen, the same person who created the newsletter, also have detection engineering list on X or Twitter, so that you can follow them. If you speak the same language as them, you'll understand the topics eventually. And also you're also learning, right? Like you do exploring the resource, you learn at school, so it will be build up everything so you can go to the top of the pyramid. And also, yeah, try to look for which company is hiring detection engineers. So you can look around on LinkedIn, play around with the keywords of the jobs. And yeah, there should be some of the things that you can do to understand more of the role. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we have appendix with a lot of resources. So some of the resources that we're talking about, so I'm just looking at my notes, like Twitter lists, open source, project that you can actually dabble in, like data, like related stuff. Sylvan mentioned the three things: threat data and detection. There's detection repository on GitHub that you can look around, like what certain detection is doing. So these are resources that you can play around on your own time. We're not gonna list like, okay, do this, do that, because it's a different path for everyone. We show the pathway, so you pick whatever that is applicable to you. If you're coming from data engineers, you might want to learn more about the data. You go from the data to the detection engineering. Yeah, can go to the next slide, please. Home lab is really important here because sure, detection engineering is building detection and deploying detection, but a good detection engineering have to understand the component of the detection engineering platform. So this is the simplest way for you to actually learn about the whole concept of like alerting, detection, threat, even like risk analysis, threat emulation, adversarial, like simulation. A lot of big words, but they'll be using it a lot in the field. So the idea of detection engineering, this chart is actually made by Sylvan. It's really good, really simple. So you have a source of log. So detection engineering, it's literally just playing with logs, and then you do the magic there, and then you build detection that is related to the threat. So you need to generate some logs. The simplest way and the most common log or like data source, it's Windows, because most of the corporation are using Windows, like computers, Windows servers. It's the easiest ways. There's some trial version too. So you can actually, you need to have certain endpoints, servers that generate logs. And then those logs will be forwarded. And there are some technologies, some application that forwarding logs. Some of the examples that we have open source and free is Logstash, which is specifically for Windows called WinLogB. So it will take all the logs that you have decided to take to the centralized server, and then they will pack it, they will send it to the centralized engine or like SIM. And then sometimes you might want to store it, you might want to process the data, so you can use tools like Elastic or OpenSearch to allow you process the data. Sometimes if you want to be more advanced, you can use data lake and stuff like that. And then the biggest part of the detection engineering is to build detection and do analysis. So you can have like Kibana that allows you to spin up dashboards, making visualization to see spikes and such. You get the last alert, which is a alerting engine that is really common. Like, you'll be surprised how common it is. Almost most of the company that build their own stuff, it's kind of like similar to last alert. So they use certain file, like in the YAML file, which is like a text file that have configurations. So you can configure your detection in there. If you Google last alert and just search for the resources, you'll get what's going on in there. And if you want to be more fancy, you want to do some data analysis, you want to do machine learning, you can always spin up Jupyter Notebook. Next slide, please. So you don't have to figure out everything from scratch. You're not alone. This thing has been done before. So you can look from different resources, such as one of my favorite is the elk, hunting elk. So by CyberWar Dog, we used to look up to him a lot because he's pushing out a lot of threat hunting, detection engineering content, and he built this really beautiful system of detection engineering. You can see it even have all the things that we mentioned. You get Elasticsearch, you get Kibana, you get Kafka, which is like some kind of like data engineering platform. If you want to do machine learning, for sure you can use Apache Spark. There's Last Alert. There's Sigma that Sylvan mentioned. It's one of the detection like framework. It's being used widely. Great people working there. A lot of open source initiative. You can learn a lot with that. So these are some of the resources that you can use. Or we can use like vendor specific like Panther or Splunk that offer free trial. And you can use data sets that's available from their CTF. Yeah.
Just for the record, we still look up to CyberWar Dog. Just
yeah. It's my coworker now. And lastly, sharing, which is like showcasing your work. The best way to do it is actually to use blog posts. You can use GitHub pages, Medium, LinkedIn. They are free. They are easy to set up. You don't have to set up your server. And to write a good blog, you have to actually check on the good blogs. You have to read it first so you can mimic it. So DFI report, which I am part of, really proud of them. They're moving from just blogging. They are now doing podcasts. So they're talking about the blogs. There are more complicated ways, podcasts, YouTube, and submitting to presentation like this. And if you want to look for ideas, you can always go to LinkedIn, you go to Twitter, see what's going on. Like the recent thread that we are seeing is the XZ library, the open source library that is being backdoor. So you can actually build detection of that. You can just play with it, see what happened when you are doing the backdooring activities, and then you can check on your lab what's going on, and then you can like, hey, I built a detection on XZ utilities, and you can check it on my GitHub page, and people will look into it. Next slide, please. So conclusion, really simple conclusion. 1 slide, 3 words, threat data detection. So turn your your lens of observation to just this 3 information, and you will understand detection engineering. And then, yeah, next slide. So this is related to the detection engineering content for the SIEM. Different brand, different SIEM. You can check their resources just to understand what's the framework that they're using for each one of them. And then the next one, open source detection collaboration. So this is a project that you can actually get into, which is really interesting. And the next slide, please. Yeah, organization that posts a lot of detection engineering content. Next slides. Related to the data, data dictionary, open source schema and such. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is, if you like reading, you should go read these resources. It will be shared with the slides. It's just a lot of reading. It's just like asking questions in the back of your head, and then try to come up with solutions. Try to come up with like what ifs. What can I do? Is there anything that I can build? So things like that. And then I think there's only one more slide. Yeah.